Gertie's got a big drinking problem. You know, I have to keep the house stocked, but I don't touch much of it myself.
Good. Maybe it's time for... We've been talking about an intervention for a while.
Yeah. It explains a lot of her more cantankerous behavior. She's a terrible drunk.
Looks like she's stalking prey.
It's the prey-offs. Hello and welcome to Expected Own Goals. Aubrey Kingsbury pours one out all over Louisville edition. I am your host, Eric Morgan.
And I am Evan Davis. We are here to talk about Washington's penalty victory over Racing Louisville in the NWSL quarterfinals. And Aubrey Kingsbury maybe being the greatest penalty shot stopper in league history.
And quite possibly in like high-level women's professional soccer history.
Of the last 15 years anyway, yeah.
That we have data for.
And we can maybe get into those specifics a little bit later, but this was a game that actually had offense.
Yeah.
Which you cannot say for the other three.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you want to start there and then get to Kingsbury's heroics again?
I think so.
Let's go there. The Washington Spirit, now with Kansas City out of the playoffs, certainly have the most firepower of any team remaining in the hunt.
Mm-hmm.
They are still without Trinity Rodman. Does that matter because of how good the rest of the team is?
Similarly to Kansas City, if Temwa Chawinga had been the only player missing from the Currents lineup this last weekend, they probably would have still won the game.
Mm-hmm.
But it was all the dominoes that fell after her that really created serious problems for them. Washington's good enough to potentially win a title without Trinity Rodman. At the very least, like get to a final without her in the starting 11. If they lost Monday, Kouassi, and Rodman, that's a different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But it does not appear that that's going to be the conversation.
No, and it turned out that having Rosamund Kouassi and Gift Monday was plenty for Washington for long stretches of this game. Let's talk about first the goal that gets chalked off, the offside, Kouassi cross shot. The broadcast did not handle it well, but it was very clearly the correct call.
Yeah, because it was this weird short corner situation that just doesn't, you don't see that very often.
Unless you're dealing with Washington.
Right. So that wasn't getting picked up by the cameras immediately, so they thought it was happening later in the play. And then they were openly disagreeing with the call. But yes, once you actually finally see that it starts at the beginning of the corner kick, that one player is a little bit too far forward, then it's the right decision. But ultimately, it didn't matter.
No, it did not matter. Kouassi was just a pest all game. She was the primary attacking component that Washington set out to sort of exploit Louisville's high fullback line with, and I thought was quite successful doing so all the way through.
Yeah, it was a crafty performance from a player who early in the game, when they were playing occasionally this back three structure, was being asked to like be a wing back. And then as the game progressed and they moved more toward a back four, she got pushed up and was just playing as a winger. But like, she wasn't there necessarily for a lot of creation. She was there to make sure that like Louisville's attention was drawn elsewhere so that Monday and Croy Bethune could do what they do.
Yeah, and all three I felt were very effective for long stretches of this game. Washington, once they have the goal called back, they still sort of sustained solid pressure. Louisville, I felt like both teams agreed to a set of principles that they were going to play this game by. Washington was going to dominate possession and largely control the attacking flow of the game, and Louisville was going to look for moments that they could counter quickly and attack.
We knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, because we know how both of these teams like to play. Quick digression. There has been a little bit of like tense debate about who should win Coach of the Year. That, you know, Bev Yanez partisans really don't like the idea that Vlatko Ananovsky is such an obvious choice. And
he will probably get penalized for what occurred this weekend.
Except the voting. Well, you know, I mean, so much of the voting's already done.
Yeah,
you know,
fair.
The fan voting may affect that. But this is all to say that, like, I still think we're both in agreement that Vlatko Ananovsky should be the Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
But there is nobody in this league better than Bev Yanez to know what she's got and what she's up against. So she knows she's at a talent deficit. You know, she knows she has to sort of like rethink the plan. But she also knows that it's, you know, a knockout game and it'd be preferable not to go 120 minutes. So she's still going to like try and use Janine Sonis like pretty high up the field. Sonis did not have a good day. And you in our preview very aptly targeted, this is the worst team to try and push your fullbacks high against. And it got exposed quite a few times, even if like Kawasi wasn't necessarily rampaging. She was just there to like make sure Sonis couldn't get out of first gear.
Yeah, and Lauren Millette also had a tough one.
Yeah.
Again, a huge amount of the burden defensively was placed on Louisville's fullbacks. Look, on XG, they did a credible job in terms of like dictating the flow of the game, less so.
Yeah, but who cares about dictating the flow of the game if you have the ability to create like high value chances? And they came pretty close to, at the very least, like matching Washington blow for blow on that score.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, you know, when a game goes 120 minutes, you're fading because your players aren't as good and your bench isn't as deep, and eventually you get to penalties. And I think the like psychology of penalties is often like an overrated thing, or at the very least the way that it's often sold as like a prescriptive way to handle it. And Adrian Gonzalez talked about this a lot after the game, about how all season they've been working on the psychology of penalties and mental focus and mental skills. And like, I'm going to need to see a little bit more evidence than you won a penalty shootout to say that that is the reason you won the penalty shootout.
I'll say this anecdotally. Aubrey Kingsbury is tough as nails when it comes to a penalty shootout. Whether or not that's a repeatable or teachable thing, that's a different issue. And how much that affects her actual performance, also a different issue.
Yeah.
But from an imposing POV goalkeeper who seems to have her mental game on lock, yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I mean, what was Washington's primary job here in defense? Stop Emma Sears.
Yeah,
and everything else will fall into place.
Totally. And for long stretches, that worked. We go to halftime with basically a level XG split, and Louisville having had a nice counterattack that nearly resulted in a very dangerous chance to close the half out. And I think Bevianes could have gone into halftime reasonably happy with how the team had performed.
Oh, I'm sure she did go reasonably happy. Yeah, no question.
Yeah, and then Washington come out and just sort of turn the screw a little bit harder, but and a little bit
that
further.
Hard. You know, it's not like they were going hell for leather. But then, you know, after Gift Monday,
the low risk playoff game,
right?
Yeah.
But then after Gift Monday scores, they really take their foot off the gas, and unfortunately, they concede to Kayla Fisher.
Yeah,
which is a little weird.
Here's another instance, and this happened a lot during this weekend. So we knew Louisville all season soft and happy to give up late goals in the game, and then turned that quality on Washington, you know, at the death, and end up scoring like a scrappy late goal that may have been not necessarily deserved against Washington.
Again, I think maybe some shadow inflected influence here. I mean, the post shot on that was 0.09.
Yeah.
You know,
look, Emma Sears had a really tough day, but at the end of the day, the theory of getting the ball up and over the top as fast as you can was a good theory of the case that Louisville finally capitalized on. And Kayla Fisher ends up with a ball over the top and ends up slotting home a really nice bit of finishing.
I mean, it's interesting that you say nice bit of finishing, because at least based on like where the ball crosses the goal mouth, it was it was a pretty savable ball.
Well, it also is just where the goalkeeper is. You just need to get this thing on target. It is not the easiest ball to get on target. So I appreciate it from that standpoint as finishing.
Yes, it's a less than 0.12 XG chance.
Yeah.
So
and it's a tight angle, and you need to just dink the thing in. So much of the game for Louisville was, what can we do with Emma Sears? How did you feel Emma Sears performed on the day?
She felt pretty neutered. I cannot recall any like signature 1v1 moments. I don't recall like any really dangerous crosses or cutbacks that she laid in. I know,
except right at the death when she gets a shot that she fizzes just wide.
It's a 0.04 XG chance.
Yeah.
You know, like it's a nothing burger chance, but unless our bigger games determined sometimes, you know.
Multiple games this weekend.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like she had a much better chance like in the first section of extra time that actually could have been the difference maker that just doesn't find its target. But regardless, the point is, like, up until that point, she had been completely neutralized.
So what do you think really worked for Washington on the day?
I mean, a few things. Like, They took a calculated risk in throwing out the vroom vroom midfield, which I boldly and it turns out incorrectly suggested that they would not do that in our playoffs preview, that Naomi Mira would come back in and Lacey Santos would hit the bench. But instead, Hal Hirschfeld went full Banshee mode as a single pivot, and you used Croy Bethune and Santos as essentially double tens throughout a lot of your in possession phases. And so they were putting Louisville under sort of like a steady bit of pressure and trying to like pick out the right moments. And they found a couple of them. And certainly the Gift Monday goal is one.
Yeah, it's an inch perfect cross from Rosamund Kwasi, who finds space outside and just drops it on a dime for an excellent header for one of the most underrated, if not the most underrated player this season, Gift Monday, who put together a stellar striking season.
Yeah. And I think you felt, you being Adrian Gonzalez, like you felt compelled to move Kwasi to the right, where she doesn't spend that much time. She's played there before, but you're doing that because you got to bring Sofia Cantore in because Trinity Robbins not available. And so your wing balance is probably not as optimized as you want it to be, but that all goes away if Rodman is healthy come the semifinal. So that's probably just a byproduct of circumstance. But again, like in a 120-minute game, you just have a better and deeper bench to like sweat that shit out.
Yeah, and a bench that has become healthier. Of course, I think like Louisville, who have a functional midfield, but we're not attempting to play in possession at all, really. I think the vroom vroom midfield made sense ultimately because both teams agreed to essentially complementary game plans against each other. We're going to cede possession, and therefore Washington can play a single pivot as opposed to a double pivot here.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you keep saying this tacit agreement. Like this was always how it was going to go.
No, both teams were who they were.
Yeah, but also, I mean, Washington could like press effectively in moments, and when your midfield is as functional as Louisville's is, all you got to do is make sure they don't really have a lot of time on the ball when they do have it, because they won't be able to get it over the top, and they will no longer be a threat to you. And so there's never that danger of like really speedy counterattacks where double tens might be a risky move. Here, it made a little bit of sense. Just maybe a bit of a surprise. But then again, I think when I made that initial comment, we didn't know that Washington and Louisville were going to be playing each other. Unless I said it in the playoffs preview, and then we did know. I don't know. Regardless, like this is actually a pretty decent team to like get away with it in terms of like that tactical approach, and get away with it. They ultimately did.
Both these teams amassed like approaching to non-penalty XG over the course of the game. There were attacking chances.
That's entirely influenced by both game state and extra time. Like if you normalize that to a per 96-minute regulation game, they're basically like at or just slightly above average in terms of their attacking performance, which is perfectly fine. And like when you think about how many times any of them had like really big chances to capitalize on, that kind of all tracks. But over the course of those 120, Washington was the better side.
Yeah.
They just couldn't manage to get one of those 6 quality chances across 120 minutes to fall.
Yeah. And then we end up in penalties. Aubrey Kingsbury versus Jordan Bloomer. Jordan Bloomer, who has been extraordinarily effective in a very small sample of penalties this season. Aubrey Kingsbury, who has been extraordinary over the course of her career, and after this game has stopped 6 of the last 7 penalties she has faced in the playoffs.
Well, she never faced a penalty shootout before last year.
Yeah.
She is doing all of these shootout heroics and in like the back end of her career, and doing it almost like in the exact same way. Like this shootout looked very similar to the shootout against Gotham in the semifinal last year, which is very funny. Like Louisville took some bad looking pens, and Kingsbury saved more than one of them.
Yeah, she saves 2. One skies off the crossbar.
Yeah.
But yeah, she
it's wild.
Do you attribute like her nearly 38% career save percentage?
Just over 38%.
Over 38% save percentage on penalties to some combination of like skill preparation, but also just like the roll of the dice.
Listen, when you look at the scope of professional women's goalkeepers over the last 15 years, she's faced 34 penalties in her career.
Which is substantial.
It's very substantial. Kaylin Sheridan's faced, I think, 44. Alyssa Nair's faced like 36, 38. Like, this is the absolute outlier upper end of the scale of the number of penalties you can face across a career recently. And so there is a pretty decent sample, and her 38% shot stopping in penalties is beaten only by Hannah Hampton, and Hannah Hampton has faced half the penalties and is 10 years younger than Kingsbury is.
Yeah. Hannah Hampton had just a ridiculous Euros, but also faced some dog shit penalties.
Yeah, well, and you maybe could make the case that Kingsbury got away with that this time too, and last year as well, because the penalties
were not good from Gotham last year either.
Based on like where they crossed the goal mouth, there's like a 0.72 post shot XG, 0.75. Like, these feel a little high. These does not account for the velocity of the shot, and we'd have to ask goalkeeping data expert Kieran Doyle Davis his thoughts on the matter. But I would think that like shot velocity probably is more of a driving factor for a penalty shot quality relative to like an open play shot quality. I don't know. But I would think that maybe like how hard you smack that fucker is going to like play up the chances of it being stopped, maybe more in the context of a pen.
Unless it clips off the crossbar.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Placement
still matters.
Placement matters. But I think the one thing that I will credit Kingsbury for in this penalty shootout is essentially she had anticipated, guessed, read the right direction of each of these what turned out to be savable penalties. She wasn't wrong-footed here.
Yeah.
And while Washington's penalties were, generally speaking, quite good, you know, slotted, low in the corner, didn't give hit hard, didn't give Bloomer a chance.
Yeah.
You know, Kingsbury is still not diving the wrong direction against a weak penalty. She is reading correctly and saving.
But the thing that why I lean more toward fortune being more heavily weighted in the outcome here than skill is just because, like, yeah, she's faced 34 savable penalties in her career, but she's had a long career. That's still a very, very small sample size.
Yeah, over the course of her career, it is not huge.
Yeah, and then when you think about other goalkeepers, some who can play 15 years and between club and country, shootouts and gameplay may face 15 penalties, maybe less than that. Like, it's a very, very rare event. And Kingsbury, after the game, said, I just knew we weren't losing. I knew that they were going to score, and I knew that I was going to stop them. I'm like, that's great. I'm sure the Washington Spirit mental skills coach works with everybody to like get yourself into that mindset, and you have to have that mindset to be a professional athlete. But did you have more of that than Louisville did? And also, please remember, Kingsbury, you said after losing the championship game to Orlando last year, you said that you admitted to the press at one point, at several points during the game, you thought, we're not losing this game. We're winning this game. And then you lost the game.
By the way, I think it's a necessary mentality for...
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. It is absolutely necessary for an athlete to have. My point is, like, is that reflective of, like, repeatable skill? And is it also reflective of some sort of, like, causative relationship with the outcome? And I'm a little less convinced of that. Like, the 38% shot stopping on pens in your career is a great descriptive metric. Like, you have been better you have saved more penalties than anybody else up to this point over the last 15 years. Does that mean you are inherently the best penalty shot stopper? I don't know if I'm totally comfortable saying that. I
think I have a more complimentary view of Kingsbury's performance, which is standout here. She has done all the mental preparation work required of playing that position.
But so did Bloomer. By the way, that's
a baseline.
Yeah, that's my point. Like, Bloomer did the same thing.
Yeah, no question. What she has done consistently year in, year out is perform at a high level and generally be, and she was again this year, an above average shot stopper just in total.
Sure, but I think...
And that helps you when it comes to the most severe shot stopping as well. Like, she reads the ball well, she has good anticipatory skills.
Sure.
And she does her homework.
But I think you could probably say the same for a lot of goalkeepers who may have allowed for penalties on the day.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's that's the problem of penalties.
Yeah.
A perfect penalty beats the best keeper every time.
Yeah.
A penalty needs to be of a diminished quality to be savable.
And there is no better counterpoint to all of this than her counterpart in the shootout, who had gained quite a reputation at stopping penalties because
and who stopped some good ones. Yeah.
She faced 4 in the regular season. She stopped 3, and then people just thought she was, the bee's knees, and then she conceded 3 penalties in that shootout.
All of which were solid and were better. Yeah, I think where we're getting to is like Kingsbury's heroics are notable and over the course of her career are quite impressive, and whether they are descriptive or prescriptive, whatever. That said, if she was facing the penalties that her own teammates had taken, we might be talking about a different outcome.
Right. Like
the shooter is a big component.
Right.
Of this.
I am. Yeah. So maybe what we're doing and ultimately getting to the same place is like, let's take just a little bit of a pause while we can praise the outcomes that Kingsbury helped generate. Like, let's just take a little bit of a pause on whether or not that means she's inherently an incredible, better than everybody else shot stopper. And you, I think, also rightly say, like, let's not ding a player like Bloomer for letting those 3 penalties go by.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's to say that Aubrey Kingsbury won this game for Washington would be, I think, both technically correct and also ridiculous as an argument. To say that she was a big factor in that, absolutely. To also say that she benefited from being on the right side, having the right attackers on her team and not on the other team. Also true.
Yeah, I mean, also, I've always thought it's a little bit... Somebody made some comment, I think about maybe during the Gotham-Kansas City game, like not wanting to go to penalties because Gotham didn't have any attackers on the field or something like that. And, like, I mean, in shootouts, to what extent does it matter that you're an attacker taking the penalty? Because everybody practices them for this eventuality. And, like, no team, especially if you go past, like, your allotted 5 slots, like, no team's getting to use only attackers and only good attackers in shootouts like this.
No, and frankly, lots of attackers have missed massive penalties in massive tournaments.
Yeah.
Roberto Baggio losing the 1994 Men's World Cup.
Megan Rapinoe.
Sorry, Megan Rapinoe. But Megan Rapinoe, who would own this as well. Like, and then on the flip side, there are Jaden Perrys out there who you would never think are decent penalty takers.
I would like to just remind people of the 3 individuals who scored Washington's penalties.
It's not attackers.
Rebe Bernal, Esme Morgan, Hal Hirschfeld.
By the way, Bernal's was unstoppable.
Oh, yeah. It was a beast.
Yeah, Morgan's was also unstoppable. Hirschfeld's also unstoppable.
Yeah, I mean, all of your best attacking weapons were on the bench. But the point is, like, you can throw a center back, a defensive midfielder, and a CB fullback combo and still win a penalty shootout, potentially. And, like, on the other side... Bethany Balser scores hers, but just because Ellie Jean, Marissa DeGrande, and Ari Borges either missed or had theirs saved, like, would Emma Sears or Ella Haas have done any better? I don't think there's really any way to answer that. And again, to go back to, like, well, it was all of the preparation that Washington did that got them this result. Like, I'm not ready to believe that until we can see how Louisville did not do the same level of preparation. Now, if you want to make the argument that, like, Louisville was maybe, like, a little bit more tired, maybe had lost a little bit of mental focus because they are Racing Louisville, and that means they have not been given the same level of, like, investment in, like, strength and conditioning and everything that a Michelle Kang run team has available to them, and that by the end of what was actually like 150 minutes, if you throw in stoppage time, they were more, not only physically, but more mentally tired than Washington's players. Yeah, I could probably... I'd sit down with you at the table to hear that argument out.
Yeah, there's a component of this that organization that is well run had things at the margins that really broke for them in this game.
Yeah.
But they created the luck that they capitalized on.
Right. And also the U.S. women's national team lost a penalty shootout to Sweden in the round of 16 at the 2023 Women's World Cup. And there's no team that's better funded with better mental skills conditioning than the U.S. women's national team.
Sure.
So it's penalties. It's just fucking penalties at the end of the day. Yeah. Aubrey Kingsbury did something absolutely insane. Has saved what, 38% of all of the penalty saves in the NWSL over the last like 3 years or some nonsense, something insane like that. Like, hats off to you, my friend. Absolutely.
I'm basically willing to bet that no matter what happens over the remainder of her career, she will exit her career with an above average penalty saved number.
Yeah, but like we talk about with just general shot stopping, it just takes such a large sample for us to really feel like it gets sticky.
Yeah.
And penalties is infinitely smaller sample size than that.
Yeah.
So great job. You did what you had to do. It was exciting. It was heroic. On to the next round.
So let's talk overview of Louisville's season. This game was an expression of most of the things that they have done well over the course of the season, and also exposed many of the deficiencies they have organizationally. What are the high-level thoughts on Louisville after this?
John Neese, owner of Racing Louisville, just had a very fawning and glowing profile written about him in The Athletic. So for me, I now need to see you earn that. And that means
Investment.
You certainly talk a great game about loving the players, about loving the environment. A lot of players talk about like the working conditions at Racing Louisville are actually really great.
Believable.
So, and it's tough for you because you are not a private equity wizard. You're not a billionaire. You actually legitimately don't have relatively equal resources like Bay FC or Angel City. Or
You are the
Spirit.
smallest small market team in this league.
Both by the fact that you play in the smallest market city, but also the amount of money that you have available to you. And it's a labor of love, and I applaud you for that. But I also still take very seriously what Becky Morgan told us in preseason. Is like, how does this team survive in the modern NWSL in the coming years? Like, if you can find it within yourself, and I think you can, because you don't need a billionaire to spend $3 million on payroll, to spend to the cap and like really challenge for maybe not international transfers, but like free agents within the league, be smarter about international transfers, trying to do some like savvy scouting and analytics stuff, which you had been doing under the Ryan Dell regime. If you can get to that place and keep this going, and also like market the team properly, so like you can get more than 10,000 a game inside Lynn Family Stadium, like make this team essentially like the Green Bay Packers of the NWSL, that would be amazing. But it starts and ends with your checkbook, John Neese.
Yeah.
Because you got a great head coach, you got a lot of good players, and a lot of players who like being there. So like repay that loyalty in kind.
Yeah, I think sort of my high level thought is this was in a lot of ways, as we talked about with Becky Morgan at the beginning of the season, kind of a make or break season for Louisville,
and they made it.
Yeah, and the making of it was impressive. Over the years, they have done a great job of finding ways to acquire meaningful starters from, either capitalizing on a player in an unhappy club situation like a Taylor Flint, or just a player who wants like a change of venue like a Janine Sonis.
And then score on a draft pick like Emma Sears.
Yeah, exactly. Or have waiting in the wings when you lose a Katie Lund, a Jordan Bloomer.
Yeah.
Like they have done a lot organizationally to identify good players and to get them in and to play them in ways that even with Kayla Fisher, who ends up having like a really solid season, like they have taken her, and I think she's got to be one of the most detested players by opposition fans in the league, but they've really sort of like let her play her game and figured out how her game corresponds with the other moving pieces here, and really maximized the value of Kayla Fisher. Like they've been very good at that. Now it's just about closing that financial gap. And just imagine with the things that they've already been doing well, what they could do if they spent, 25% more.
Because you look at the supporters who show up at Lynn Family Stadium for all of those home games.
Yeah.
I mean, they average less than 6,000 a game, and it is tough sometimes to see a lot of empty seats there. But the supporters who are there week in, week out, banging the drums and singing the songs and blowing the purple smoke, like they deserve this not to be a one-off.
Yeah. And moreover, you have a lot of players like entering their peak. This is when you push chips in as a small market team and try to build a team that can legitimately title contend and win.
That's right.
And like you actually have the pieces here. Use those peak seasons of Taylor Flint and Emma Sears and Kayla Fisher and use those emerging seasons of the Katie O'Kanes and the Sarah Webbers of the world.
Yeah.
And the Jordan Bloomers. Yeah. You have a lot of pieces that really work. Now push the chips in and do it.
Yeah. This is the time to grow, not to run in place. So I hope that is what we see in the offseason for Racing Louisville.
All right.
We'll talk about Washington in our semifinal preview.
Yeah. But just any thoughts on Washington for this game?
I mean, other than what we said, the better team won, I think, at the end of the day. And it was great to actually see them generating some high level offense. So
favorites for the title now?
That's certainly what the projection models say, whether you look at Trevor Larner's ELO model or you look at the American Soccer Analysis model. Both, if you average them together, Washington has the edge at about 36-37%, but it's still tight. I mean, it's very reasonable to think that Gotham could also be champions, but it is a very exciting prospect, especially for our fans, to think that Washington and Gotham might meet each other in the championship game.
I would say that the biggest winners of the weekend are clearly Gotham. The second biggest winners of the weekend are the Washington Spirit.
Yes. So we will talk about them in our semifinal preview at the end of the week. In the meantime, click the link in the show notes if you haven't done so already to become a Patreon member. You will get both the video and the audio versions of our show ad-free, as well as 4 bonus episodes every single month and a lot of other bonus material besides that. Follow us on social media at XOwnGoals. That's the letter XOwnGoals on all social platforms. And we will talk to you for Portland, San Diego very soon.
Bye.